You have found the Redhead Family Therapy Guy and a Mic podcast, looking at mental health through a pop culture lens.
Mm-hmm. So what have you seen in counseling that are like the barriers to when clients really struggle to see, like, you're trying to help them connect the dots, right? Like between like some abuse that they've been through, maybe they've opened the door to some kind of history.
So pain, for sure. It's so painful, so scary that it's just not something that they can get access to. Like, you really have to, what we call, build that window of tolerance, right? Get them to a place where they can feel safe. And so as a therapist, you try to do that with them, right? So I try to engage the spouse or whoever, if it's whatever it is, the person, because I'll do it individually too, depending on the issue. Try to engage and then develop that safety. And you do that through like empathic conjecture. You throw out like, hey, it's this or it's that, or you're
don't
trying
you
to
love it
guess,
when,
basically.
Right, or trying to. Don't you love it when they tell you no to every single thing?
Oh, yeah. And for me, I'm just cueing in, okay, it's deeper. You try to get in. And so it's amazing. It's really beautiful to me when you finally get the crack. So, and the crack is usually emotion, right? It's usually crying or tearing up or just a pause. And
that's because that's what they're paying us to do. Yeah. They're paying us to make them cry.
Yes.
That's the whole point. You go to therapy, so your therapist, if you go to therapy and you're never crying, you're wasting your money.
Yeah.
It's like you didn't earn your money today. You can't make me cry.
It is. There's some truth there. Like, I feel like if I got some good emotion out, then I feel like, okay, maybe I did something right. Yeah.
Especially if you just leave them hanging in their pain. Oh, good, you've cried. All right.
Yeah, they leave happy. I'm like,
we didn't do a good job.
Yeah, maybe we don't need to meet anymore.
That's one of the things that I don't know if people get about therapy. It's like, if you're doing good therapy, like, you might not enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, it might be really
gets
painful.
Worse before it gets better, right?
It's so funny. I had a client call me the other day. I hadn't seen this client in a long time. And the client called me, and I'm trying not to use, to keep it as vague as possible. Yes. Try not to use pronouns. And the client was like, I'm really struggling. I'm having a hard time, and I'm stuck. And I knew if I called you that you'd help me, talk about what I need to talk about or get in. She's like, oh, dang it. All right, it's a she. I guess that's 50-50. You're not going to figure out who it is. But, and she's like, I've really enjoyed the process, but she's like, but I hate having to come talk to you, because it's so emotionally painful. And it was wonderful. And, because I was so glad that, she had a good experience with the relationship, that she knew that, we could have a good discussion, which it was. But I appreciate that, right? And I think that's an important thing to understand, that, like, good therapy doesn't feel good, because it's sometimes for some folks,
I think oftentimes good therapy requires good self-care. In between, right? It's just like someone who is active in some type of sport. If you are active, if you are training, you have to have good recovery. Otherwise, your body deteriorates.
Well, but also great metaphor, because it's going to be painful, right?
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. And it's going to be even more painful if you don't do good recovery.
And we're back to young.
Yes, we are.
Right?
Were we at young in the beginning? I don't remember.
He's I loosely quoted the statement from The Road Less Traveled that all mental illness.
Was that in the last session or this session?
No, it was.
Oh, this isn't a session. What do we call it? This is a podcast.
Oh, it is a session now. We're doing therapy now, are we? No, I don't want to do therapy. We talked about this. We're just talking. I'm not doing therapy for you today, dude. Gosh, every time I just want to hang out, and you're like, "Will you do therapy?" No, I'm just joking. So, no, the idea that all mental illness is the avoidance of pain, of discomfort, right? And so, this is one of the things about life that's really hard, is that to really grow, the sports metaphors are fantastic. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to do regular work every day. There's suffering involved with growth. I mean, there's just no way around that.
Well, and I think that kind of plays into some of this rhetoric about knowing ourselves, is sometimes when we feel like things are going poorly or not how we perceive them to go, we feel like maybe we're being punished in some way. But possibly that's us growing and stretching, and that's a good thing.
Right.
Maybe discomfort isn't bad as we perceive it.
I would say it's not.
It
doesn't feel good, but it's essential.
I think a lot of times culturally, right, within especially the United States and maybe other countries, I don't know, but I feel like, if you're successful, you're doing things right, or if you're doing well at something, you're doing things right. And I think that maybe discomfort is not that you're doing things wrong, but that you're actively growing and progressing, and that maybe that's a good thing, even though it's not comfortable.
The social work. This is your phrase. I'm not a social worker. Lean into the discomfort.
Yes, lean in.
Embrace that discomfort.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, come on. Look, folks, you're not going to have a good marriage if you don't engage some hard things. I'm not saying you have to fight. And if you are emotionally mature enough between the two of you to not argue, good on you, Well, but it's just like you got to go there. Like you got to talk about the hard things, or you got to, you have to figure it out,
Well, and isn't that really wherein comes the real beauty and blessing of a marriage is
what's so cool about it.
Connection in those tough times.
Yeah, like we paid a price,
and to be able to find connection within that is so powerful.
It's cool.
It's more. It's
so cool.
It's more than you can get anywhere.
Well, it's one of the things that really is beautiful about
and in any relationship,
a lifelong friendship, a great parental relationship, and absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of the things that exists in my marriage with my wife. I mean, she has suffered for our growth. I mean, considerably.
I probably need to suffer a little more.
Goodness, really? Nah. Oh my goodness. So barriers to knowing yourself. So I would say that avoidance of pain. It's a real problem. Yeah. It's a real problem with like clients that, and it's hard, right? Because trauma is no joke. And it's like, you want me to embrace my, you want me to feel, I don't want to feel that.
And I think the avoidance really is the way that person has learned to survive.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, this is one of the things that I love to try to say, and I don't know if I'm articulate about it, but one of the things that's really clear to me is that trauma, the result, that the thing that we learn from trauma is the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what becomes traumatic, right? I did not say that articulately. Like, the negative result of trauma is you learn the wrong lesson. And the lesson is always, I'm not worthy of love and belonging.
Sure.
And that's a lie. That's not true, right? I mean, if somebody has been abusive to you, that's their problem. That's their sin.
Sure.
That's the thing that they need to fix. And it happened in your relationship. It wasn't okay. It's not right. But you learn, well, I must not be worthy of love. Or I'm only worthy of love if I do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, that's not true. But that's what we take away. And then we try to manage that. We try to cope with that by trying to control everything that seems chaotic and out of control in life.
And I think it's important to just jump in and say, trauma comes in many forms.
Oh my goodness!
Right? Yeah. It's not just
abuse.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be a friendship trauma.
Well, and it can also be it can be perceived. Right? Maybe I'm traumatized and someone didn't mean to traumatize.
Okay, so this is what's really powerful. All right, so my background is in human development. Like the child mind doesn't get it. Right?
Yeah.
And so it can perceive a failure, an abandonment. It can perceive an abuse where there might not have been one there.
Sure.
The parents might not have done anything wrong because the child's mind doesn't understand the world. That's why kids are afraid of what's under the bed or what's in the closet, because all of a sudden they become aware that there's a closet and they don't know what's in there. It's like, well, the door's shut, the light's off. And it's like, well, it's just your clothes. And they're like, well, how do you know? Like the light's off. You don't know what's in there. And their mind's like, there could be a monster in there. Like, you don't know.
A gremlin.
Right, but we know that there's not a monster in there. We know that, like, it's your closet. It's where the clothes are. But the child mind, like, is expanding and connecting. There's a shift that happens from age. There's an explosion that happens in neuron connection. Oh, dang it, I'm going to say this wrong. I want to say it's in, during the language explosion years, I think like 2 to 4 or something like that, or 2 to 5. And then there's another one at puberty, right? Where we go from operational to pre-operational thought, where we can think about how other people are thinking, which you can't think of. We're very concrete. and there's different aspects of our concrete understanding.
Well, and also, this is generally speaking, right? And I think that depending on our emotional state, we can even have times where maybe we're perceiving things in not the way that our aged mind should perceive things, right? Mm-hmm. I think that it depends on a lot of things, but generally speaking, yeah, there's stages of development, but I think that those can still impact us in different ways.
Absolutely, right? And so